Another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad, and alongside me, yes, actually alongside me this time, is my brother Tanner, believe it or not. How's it hanging, dude?
I'm chilling. We're in the Sunshine State now.
We're living the California dream down here in California. Hitting a podcast before we go watch the legendary pitcher for the Angels, Ohtani. That's why we're rocking the Angels gear here if you're watching on YouTube. So next episode we'll briefly discuss how either great or bad that game goes. We'll see what happens. But today we're going to cover some tight end rankings. I know I said wide receiver rankings, but we're going to save that because we realized as we started ranking the wide receivers, there's going to be a lot of them, folks. So that's going to be a long episode. Then we're going to do some key NFL free agents that are still around, and then lastly, we're gonna talk a little bit of Dallas Cowboys offseason moves. Tanner, you ready to get into these tight end rankings?
I am, absolutely.
Here we go. So we're only going to do 10, and we're going to do some honorable mentions. So I'm going to start off. We're going to go from 10 all the way down to 1. We got a lot of feedback on our last episode with the halfback rankings, and we're going to keep going with these rankings. Every episode we'll have a new rankings. Eventually, when we run out of rankings to do, we're going to bring in legends. That's going to be fun. But starting with me, I'm going to start with my honorable mentions. I couldn't leave this guy out. Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill.
You got to have Taysom Hill in there. I know there's only 10 tight ends, but realistically, that dude, when we were talking about our running backs last time, we had to give the legends respect, you know? And Taysom Hill quite literally broke the tight end position in fantasy one year with him being able to play quarterback too.
I think he just broke every position in fantasy. Like, he can be a receiver, he can be a running back, he can be a quarterback or a tight end. I don't think he can play offensive lineman, but if he
can block though.
He probably could, you know.
Yeah, he can block though. He could probably be a fullback if you wanted him to.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
I mean, he's
like him.
You have to put him on there for me just because of, like I said, what he did. I had him in fantasy one year, won a fantasy championship literally because of this dude. Like, literally was on special teams and went out and played quarterbacks and plays tight end. And when you're being used that much, you're going to be a key part of that offense. Another honorable mention I have to do is Mr. Kyle Pitts. And I'm going to preface this before I say this. This is his make or break season, for sure. I think they have 2 more years left on his contract because he was a first-round pick, and they'll pick up his 5th-year option. And I know it's crazy to put him on, a top 10 list. Technically he's number 12 for me on this list, but when you look at his athleticism and all the traits that he has, I know he hasn't done well last season or the previous year, but last year he was hurt. The previous year, you could tell it was just kind of slow. He needed to get into that offense a little bit more, but now you have a running back coming out of the University of Texas with Bijan Robinson, and it's going to completely open up the world for him because the safety is going to have to be on Bijan pretty much every single time. You're going to have to bring a safety down low just because Bijan breaking out. So that's going to open up the field for Kyle Pitts, and Drake London's coming into his own, the wide receiver that they have there as well, and then their quarterback Desmond Ridder. So that's why I have Kyle Pitts on there. Sheer athleticism. If he does not do well this year, though, you're looking at potential bust talks.
I think so. I mean, I looked at his stats before we did this, and apparently he his first year he had 1,000 yards, and then this year he only had 300. Obviously, like you said, because he's injured and stuff like that, but it kind of is a make or break season because coming into the league he was a top 4 pick, so he's got a lot of expectations in Atlanta,
especially on a tight end. When you're spending a top 4 draft pick on a tight end, and you have to be able to show in every single day, but that's why he's not in the top 10 on this list.
I think it's fair. Yeah.
Last for me, David Njoku. I had to put him on here. Not crazy numbers, but all around just a great player. He makes acrobatic catches, but he also blocks. He does the dirty work. He picks up a lot of blocks for Nick Chubb. I've watched a lot of Cleveland Browns football over the years, and David Njoku, like I said, he can make the athletic catches, but he loves to block. And tight ends, that's a rare combination in today's game. In the old game 10 years ago, every tight end did it.
Yeah.
But today it's a rare combination, and I mean, I know you're the Browns guy. What do you think about David Njoku?
I mean, I think you said it. He's a very athletic tight end, but he's still kind of like that tight end mold that you're still seeing, where he's it's very kind of like a blocking first tight end and then go out and catch the ball second. He's more like that tight end, and I think you hit the nail on the head. He's a very good blocker, and you've seen him make some amazing catches. So he has athleticism, and he can go up and he can get the ball, but he's an okay route runner and stuff like that, and that's kind of where it limits him. But with Deshaun back there now, I mean, I think you're definitely going to see a lot more of him in the passing game, just because, well, someone's got to cover Amari, you know.
It's true.
And if you want to dump it off to another great target, Njoku's an awesome one, you know. So they have a lot of weapons, and I definitely know Deshaun Watson knows how to use tight ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. So those are my 3 honorable mentions. Who do you got for your honorable mentions?
Funny enough, starting at the bottom, I guess if there's a bottom, they're all pretty much the same. But I had Cole Kmet as one of mine.
Okay.
I think he's a good tight end. I think he's good. He's young and he's got a lot of fire in him. What do you think about him?
I'm not going to tell you where, but he is on my list. Okay. Cole Kmet's absolutely on my list, so I'll wait to give a full breakdown. But the thing with Cole Kmet is, I want to say he came out of Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, he was a very, very good pass blocking tight end. Mm-hmm. And he's continued to do that in the NFL. And that's always something that's very scary at the tight end position, because guess what? NFL, they're a lot stronger. And they're a lot faster and they're a lot bigger. So it's really good to see him continue to do that. And honestly, you know, Cole Kmet playing for the Bears, that's a hard place to play with a quarterback like Justin Fields.
It is.
Like they're projecting him this year to have over 1,000 yards rushing. I'm seeing on some fantasy sites. Imagine having to block for that every play. Yeah. That's really hard to do. So, you know, my respect goes out to him. Like I said, I think he is still very good at pass blocking, and I think that's an undervalued resource in the NFL today at the tight end position.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The next one on my list, he's probably on your list. I don't know if he is or not, but he kind of had I wouldn't say like a glow up last year, because everyone kind of knew who he was, but he definitely got like the stats and the numbers that he deserved, I would say, is Evan Ingram. I really like Evan Ingram, especially since he's gone to Jacksonville. I think he's kind of like, it's like a new beginning for him with Trevor Lawrence, because you saw him a lot in the passing game. It's kind of a similar situation I was talking about earlier with Njoku, but you know, Christian Kirk, he's not open, so he goes to Evan Ingram, and he's a lot like you know, like a new age tight end. He's very fast, he's athletic, and he can make those catches. And they're using him primarily in the passing game, and I really like what they're doing in Jacksonville with him. He's done very well.
I mean, the thing with Evan Ingram is I loved him coming out of Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Right. Like he was the first run of this new age tight end. Mm-hmm. He's been in the league for a long time. Mm-hmm. He was the run, like I said. So when I say new age tight end, what I mean by that is in the early 2000s up until the teens, 2012, 13, 14, you really had a lot of tight ends that were also pass blocking, but you weren't really taking tight ends that were pass catchers. Yeah. Right. And he was one of those tight ends in the first wave. Of course, there was prior tight ends to him, but he was one of those tight ends in the first wave. And in New York, he had a really good rookie season. Mm-hmm. And I was a huge fan of him, like I said, coming out of Ole Miss. But he had a really good rookie season, and then after that, he completely fell off.
He just disappointed.
He just completely disappeared, completely disappointed every single game. But then you get traded. Or you get released and you go to another team and he gets to another team, and then he goes to Jacksonville and eventually finds his home and is now a top 10 tight end in the league, in my opinion. He's on my list. But yeah, I mean, all I can say about him is that he is very, very good at catching the ball, and Trevor Lawrence is very good. Trevor Lawrence can hit a penny 50 yards down the field, and Evan Ingram can catch a ball over the shoulder at the tight end position. That's hard to do.
Well, I mean, imagine standing out just on that team in general. They've got a lot of athletic, like, wide receivers too. So it's like
with Christian Kirk, yeah.
Yeah, so for him to, you know, make it be a standout player is pretty impressive.
Absolutely. Is that all your honorable mentions, or do you have one more?
One more, and it's someone you've already mentioned. It's Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
So it's basically the same thing. I just think the reason he's not higher is just because he's disappointed, you know? Like, he looks like everything should be going right for him just based on, like, his measurables and, like, the positions that he's been put in the NFL. But it just hasn't really been working, which kind of sucks, you know, because he's got a lot of talent, you know? He's just coming out of college. He was just like, oh, he's going to be the next, like, great pass-catching tight end. And it really hasn't happened yet. So I don't know. I think he can still get there, but he needs to put in some stats in this next season.
He absolutely does. And I couldn't have said it better myself. And the thing with Kyle Pitts too is, you know, jumping into it again, if you look at his quarterbacks, like Marcus Mariota, no disrespect, but that's not
no, it's not great.
That's not the best pass throwing quarterback. Then you have Desmond Ridder, who's a rookie. You know what I mean? And then you have some veterans back in there as well. And it's just inconsistent quarterback play. After they lost Matt Ryan, they haven't really had a guy that stepped up that's done anything. So it's really hard to be a pass catching tight end in that offense when, you're relying to get the ball. And the other thing too with the Falcons is that they utilize Cordell Patterson a lot. Yeah. And he was there when Cordell Patterson was having his breakout season. So you ride the hot hand a lot. And when you're a team that's always behind in games, the nice thing for Kyle Pitts is you're going to be passing most of the time. But the other thing is that Kyle Pitts wasn't on the field a lot of the times because of the packages and because of the situations that the Falcons were in, and because of his injuries. So I just want to see him, like I said, with this new running back coming in and having him with this option-based quarterback as well. It's going to rely on speed. It's going to rely on option game, I think. And I think a lot of the first read is going to be Bijan Robinson. Second read is going to be Pitts. And then third read down the field is going to be Drake London. So I'm excited for the Atlanta Falcons offense this year. I actually would take all three of those players in fantasy.
I think it's like looking up for them. We've talked about it last podcast, but they look good. They're not done with their rebuild, obviously, but they've got their players. They've got their very key players, and I'm happy to see it round out. Who do you have at number 10?
So I'm just going to jump into number 10 and number 9 because we've already talked about them. And I'm going to preface this. When I made my list, I had 3 tiers. So tier 1 is, the top 3 pretty much. And then there's a huge gap between tier 2 and tier 1. I'll say that. The gap between tier 2 and tier 3 isn't as big, but there's still a bit of a gap. Yeah. That's crazy that you're on a tier 3 and you're already only number 10 in the tight ends. That's how rare a really good tight end is in this league. And that's why we didn't even do 15 tight ends, because I had 13 tight ends that I would realistically be comfortable with, starting a franchise with. Yes, there's, Zach Ertz and everybody like that too, but they're kind of on the back 9 of their career at this point. But
yeah, I agree.
Jumping into number 10, the tight end from the Bears, Cole Kmet, and then number 9, Evan Ingram, the Jaguars. So Cole Kmet, the big thing I wanted to wait is just because, like I was saying earlier, just a little bit, I touched on it. It's very hard to work in that offense with Justin Fields. But now Justin Fields has a number 1 wide receiver with DJ Moore. And, you have a really good blocking tight end, like I've been saying with Cole Kmet. David Montgomery went out. But, they got a great running back to fill in the void there. And offensive line has been getting better over the year. Chicago's built on that defense, which means the offense is going to be on the field more. Now, does Justin Fields take that next step is the question. Does Justin Fields actually throw the ball and not have like a 2,600 passing yard season with like a 1,100 rushing yard season? I'm not saying that's a failure, but at the same time, when you have Cole Kmet more on the field, that's a lot of targets right there.
Yeah,
those two are a lot of targets. So look at Cole Kmet to be not, I don't think top 5 fantasy numbers realistically. I think there's like 5 tight ends you draft realistically, and then you kind of just wait to see who hits after that in fantasy. But Cole Kmet, man, he's a really, really good tight end to have, and he's young, and he's been with Justin Fields the whole time, so he has that rapport with him. And whenever he needs him late in games, that's usually when he gives him the rock. But it's always usually around the line of scrimmage, which sucks.
Yeah,
because Cole Kmet doesn't get up the field too quick.
I just don't know what to think about this Bears offense going into 2022, 2023.
I think it's a make or break season for them too.
Yeah,
for this offense,
I think so. I mean, especially for Justin Fields.
Absolutely.
You can't. If he puts up another season like he just did, what do you want? Like, what do you want him to do? The front office to do? You know, I don't know. But I'll go into my number 10 though. At number 10, I have, and this I don't know if you have him higher, but the only reason I don't have him higher is because of recent situations in that locker room. Is Dawson Knox.
Yeah, it's hard when you draft the best tight end in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I left him off the list. It's hard to leave Dawson Knox off the list for me, but he's not the number 1 tight end in that room right now.
Yeah, the thing about it though is like, it's going to be a competition, for sure, absolutely a competition, and the better tight end is going to win. And I don't know specifically which one that one's going to be.
I personally think Dawson Knox will still be the number 1 tight end this season. I think he's gonna help and coach the young rookie tight end that they drafted in the first round that they should not have gotten there. But the thing is Josh Allen elevates everybody's play.
Yeah, of course.
And when you're the number 1 tight end and you fall to 27, 28, and they sit there and take him, that's sending a clear message to your tight end.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, look, we need every weapon we can get in the AFC to win, because you have to play the Chiefs and you have to play the Bengals. And I'm sorry, Dawson Knox, but you didn't get it done last year. Like,
he played well.
He did play well, and I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be the starter there, but what I'm saying is when you drafted the number 1 tight end in the first round, I don't think Dawson Knox is going to sign another contract there. I don't think so. I think Dawson Knox is probably gone in a couple years max. I don't know how much is left on his contract, but let me you know, before I destroy him anymore. I had Dawson Knox in fantasy. I like Dawson Knox as a player. I did not think that his ceiling was this high, but once again, Josh Allen elevates the play of everybody on that team. Mm-hmm. He's made Stephon Diggs look like an even better wide receiver, and I didn't know that was possible, right? So the thing with Dawson Knox for me is the consistency is the big thing.
It is.
I've seen Dawson Knox catch unbelievable passes over the shoulder, sideline catches, toe taps, and then I've seen him miss wide open passes right in his chest. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why they had a need at the tight end position there for a little bit. But yes, over the past couple years, for sure, you have to put Dawson Knox on this list.
I think it just makes sense at number 10. Like, he's got next to him Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, and Cole Kmet. Like, that looks like a perfect spot for me. You know, those are the 3 people behind him, and so I think it makes sense. And especially with the next person on my list is Darren Waller, who is the definition of inconsistency. But not based on play, it's just based on injuries. And I don't know, Darren Waller is, when he's healthy and when he's on the field, he's one of the best tight ends in the league. You know, that's just what you've seen from him over his career, but he hasn't been healthy and he hasn't been on the field. So it's hard to put him in conversation with the best tight ends in the league. You know, what do you think?
He's also on my list. But yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I literally have on my list right here an asterisk when healthy. Yeah. That's Darren Waller. It does stink that he went to the New York Giants because, you know, now he's in the division, but now we get to watch him 2 times a year. And
probably only one time.
Do what?
I said probably only one time a year.
Yeah, no, yeah. Can't really say, yeah, true. But yeah, the thing with Darren Waller, it sucks. Like, his story's incredible. Mm-hmm. He has been a top 5 tight end, if not top 3 tight end, literally over the past 5 years, but those injuries. If it wasn't for injuries, he would absolutely be in the top 3 range. He would have probably been holding some records up there with the Raiders too. He was one of the very few bright sides on that offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, over the past couple of years with him and Josh Jacobs there, Devontae Adams wasn't there at that point yet. But yeah, I mean, he's a really, really good player, but he just has to get onto the field. He just has to get onto the field.
It's just so hard for him to do it. I mean, hopefully when he goes to the New York Giants, it'll turn around and he doesn't have any injuries. That would be nice.
We'll see what happens with New York, but you also don't know what that offense is going to do.
Yeah, that's true.
They paid Daniel Jones a lot of money. I'm not a believer in that contract. At the same time, you can't tell me that there was a better option out there for the money. But still, I mean, he took them to the playoffs last year. You really like the front office. The coach is one of my favorite coaches in the NFL in New York. But I just don't know if that team is really ready to take the next step. And not to mention their division has... Arguably, the Eagles and the Cowboys are in the top 3 teams in the NFC, in the entire NFC.
Yeah, it's probably the hardest division in the NFC.
Exactly, and then you have, you know, the Niners up there too with the Seahawks. But getting off my tangent, talking about the NFC teams, it's like when you have a player like Darren Waller and he's healthy, and you have about 4 or 5 games left in the season when you know you're going to be playing Dallas once, you know you're going to be playing Philly once at the end of that season. You know that's if you're a Giants fan, you know that is arguably 0-2. and if Darren Waller's not there, good luck, right? Because the Giants got rid of their best wide receivers with Kadarius Toney going to the Chiefs, and their other wide receiver, I think Darius Slayton. I think they had Darius Slayton, and they had Kenny Golladay. Sorry for that contract, $70 million right down the drain. But the Giants have been searching for pass catchers, and here's the thing with the Giants. They had a guy that when I used to watch him in the early 2000s that would just, I feel like he's the type of guy that would take a cigarette, put it out on your eye, and then just keep running right over you. By a guy named Jeremy Shockey. That was a tight end that could pass block and could absolutely truck you. It could catch the ball. And he could do anything. Their offense was built around him. Their offense was built around Barber, the running back. Or no, Barber was on the Tampa team, and I don't remember. Anyway, long story short, him, and on the other side of the ball, you had Michael Strahan. So you have these key pieces you fill your offense around. If Darren Waller is healthy and he's coming back at 100%, I do not see somebody else on that team other than Saquon Barkley getting the ball more this season.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
The great thing about Darren Waller, the last thing I'll say about him, is that he is very, very hard to cover at the linebacker position. Because usually you have linebackers or safeties that are going to cover those tight ends. You don't have a corner usually covering a tight end unless you're Travis Kelce, unless you're Mark Andrews, unless you're Kyle Pitts. Some of those really fast tight ends that can get off the line. Evan Ingram still. But when you have a Darren Waller, it's really hard for a safety to cover him or a linebacker to cover him because he's so big and he's fast too.
So big.
He's so big and he can get moving down the field very quickly. So that was your number 9. My number 9, I already said it, was Evan Ingram. Jumping to number 8, Pat Freiermuth, the tight end for the Steelers. He's another tier 3 guy for me. I had to put him on the list just because of a theme you keep saying, consistency.
Yeah.
You have to put him on the list because him and Najee. And, I mean, really there has been a lot of consistent play with the Steelers over the years with Deontay Johnson. They now have George Pickens, the wide receiver. They're looking up with Kenny Pickett's really the only big question mark on that offense. But Pat Freiermuth is not a question mark to me. He is a great tight end, and he is absolutely going to get the ball probably 5 times a game, if not more. You know what I mean? And he's going to make very key blocks.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's like a young up-and-coming, not star. I mean, we'll see what happens, but he's definitely one of those rising, stars that you are seeing with the tight ends. I mean, it's hard to say that anyone has kind of performed better than him in his time in the league. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
Just as young as he is, I like him a lot. I think he's a really good player, and it sucks that he's on the Steelers, but I do like Muth. Whenever he makes a catch or something.
Yeah.
Muth.
Yeah. I love the sound that they do that. Oh.
No, we're still going.
Okay.
Good.
I thought we experienced some technical difficulties, but don't worry. We're all good, folks. Anyway, that was my number 8. Who's your number 8 tight end?
My number 8 is someone we've already talked about, but I think he deserves this number 8 spot. It's David Njoku. Just for all the reasons that we have said before. He's just a very athletic tight end, and I think the big thing about this tight end specifically, especially among these kind of younger guys, is that he knows the system really well. He's been in Cleveland for a long time. They previously spent a first-round pick on him. So he better know the system, and he better do everything that he needs to do for a long time. And he's been, I would say, consistently good. He hasn't been, amazing. He hasn't been, somebody that you always watch, always, keep your eye out for. But he's been consistently good. And every 3-4 games, he'll catch a touchdown. But he makes key plays when he needs to. And that's the important thing about Njoku. He hasn't had to be that number 1 role, the top 3 tight ends on this list. You probably know who they already are. He hasn't had to do that, but he's done everything that he needs to do, and I think that's why he's just number 8. He has a good amount of consistency, although I would like to see more. But
yeah, I mean the thing is with the Cleveland is that when you drafted David Njoku, when you're drafting any player in the first round, not only are you hoping them to be a starter, you're hoping for them to be an impact player.
Yes.
Right. David Njoku, consistency, he's not an impact player. But every single game, he makes 2 or 3 catches that he needs to make at the opportune time.
Yes.
The way that I always compare tight ends to is I always kind of compare tight ends to defensive tackles on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of defensive tackles are going to get sacks every drive, unless you're Aaron Donald. Yeah. Not a lot of tight ends are going to get touchdowns every drive unless you're Travis Kelce, right? So that's kind of how I look at it with the tight end position. And I think that David Njoku really had the athleticism down coming into the league. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is that it feels like to me that he didn't necessarily try to make that athleticism better. He was like, okay, this is my athleticism, this is my ceiling, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to make everything else around me better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because with him coming into the league, he couldn't run block. Mm-hmm. From what I saw coming out of college, he couldn't run block very well. Now he can.
He's a very good blocker now.
He's a very good blocker now. He loves to get down in the trenches. Mm-hmm. He loves to get that gritty player now, which you didn't see because his play is a lot of flashy play.
Yes,
When
absolutely.
he catches the ball, when he gets the ball on the field, run after catch is incredible. You know, a drag route with him is one of my favorite players in the league to watch him run just a drag route because it's so simple. It's right near the line of scrimmage, but then, boom, burners turn on. You know what I mean? So the thing with David Njoku is that a lot of fans in Cleveland wanted to see him kind of go to one more step.
Exactly.
Maybe not every 3-4 games catch a touchdown. Maybe every 2 games catch a touchdown, right? But that's not really the type of player he is.
Yeah, he's gonna fill in the gaps where he needs to, and I don't think it's the fact that he can't do that upper echelon of play. It's just the fact that they don't need him to, and they haven't needed him to. If that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. You know, because Cleveland's offense has been okay to mediocre, you know, the past couple of years. But I don't know. I like him at number 8. Who do you have at number 7?
Yeah, I mean, last thing on
Yeah.
Njoku is I think that him in Cleveland is almost like just like a staple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just a staple. He's now a veteran of this league. He is absolutely helping younger guys in terms of coaching and everything, helping them around the locker room and everything. He seems like a great locker room guy. Also, off the court or off the field, he's friends with Israel Adesanya, who is a UFC champion. He trains jiu-jitsu. You know, he's a very athletic guy, and he continues to get more athletic and has so much stuff going on outside of the sport, too. And it makes me wonder, maybe that's why he didn't get to that next side or that next ceiling.
Yeah.
Because maybe he had so much other stuff going on, which is not bad, taking nothing away from him. I think he's a great player, and once again, he's still higher on, or not, he wasn't on top 10 for me, but, you know, top 13 tight end in the league, making millions of dollars, already signed multiple contracts, you know, great player. Great player overall. Going to my number 7 is, if he was still in Dallas, Dalton Schultz would be higher. But I have him at number 7 in an asterisk by it, not sure with new team and how they use here. Because the thing with Dalton Schultz is Dalton Schultz was Dak Prescott's safety blanket. Every play essentially had Dalton Schultz either on an underneath route or a curl or a slant or somewhere near the line of scrimmage just in case Dak needed to get the ball away from him. And C.J. Stroud's going to be doing a lot of the same because he's going to be a young quarterback. He's going to be getting that ball, and that timing is what he has to develop and what he has to kind of get a cadence for. So a lot of passes in the NFL in this first season is going to be little dump-offs.
Yeah.
So Dalton's going to eat on those little dump-offs. But what else is my big question. Like, I just don't know how this Houston offense looks. I know they have a really good tackle, and I know they have a really good running back. Other than that, they don't have a whole lot of great players. Everything else is pretty much draft picks.
Yeah.
And it's you have a rookie quarterback, you have a rookie wide receiver. You know what I mean? You have a tight end that is technically on his first team other than Dallas, right? Like, how good did Dak Prescott make Dalton Schultz? How good did Kellen Moore make Dalton Schultz? Because I feel like the Cowboys' offense is literally around the tight end. It is literally built around the tight end at times.
Yeah.
Secondary to running back.
I definitely think so.
You know what I mean? So Houston's isn't like that. Houston's is built around Dameon Pierce, right? Houston's is going to be built around C.J. Stroud's arm and Quentin Johnson and everything, that burner down the field, that deep threat down the field, right? So, I don't know.
It's interesting because you see, like, just with the course of Dalton Schultz being in Dallas, you've seen, like, him get open in a lot of various different ways. You know, like, you've seen him get open in the flat, and you've seen him get open, like, in the middle of the field a lot, especially in the middle of the field. And that's kind of where they used him when he did go downfield. But, like, a lot of those passes, like you said, that he caught were kind of short little dump-off passes. But when they wanted him to go long, he could. And he did. And he made those big plays. And he made, not catches in, like, crazy traffic, but he did make those pretty go-up-and-get-'em kind of balls. Because he's a big guy. You know, it's hard to cover him if you're, like, a linebacker. So I really hope they use him in the same way in Houston. I don't really know how that scheme's going to go.
Exactly.
It's kind of hard to see from the outside looking in. But, like, if you do kind of take a guess at it, you know, I'm assuming they're going to run through Dameon Pierce, like you said. Mm-hmm. And that should open up options for the tight end, especially if they're doing, like, some play-action pass or something like that. And I would throw the ball to Dalton Schultz. I think he's pretty good.
I mean, and also remember, he took less money and less years to go to Houston.
Yeah.
He took another 1-year prove-it deal, and he wants to eat. He is going to be demanding for this ball because he's on a 1-year, $9 million a year contract when Dallas offered him 3 3 years at $12 to $15 million a year, he said no. So that's how good he thinks he is and how much he's betting on himself. Let's see if it pays off.
Yeah, I mean, who else is on that offense that is going to get the ball?
Damian Pierce.
Exactly.
And they have some rookie wide receivers that you have no idea, rookie wide receivers. And the big thing with rookie wide receivers, other than Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and these most recent wide receivers that have come into the league, usually it takes a year.
Yeah.
Usually it takes a year. Same with the quarterbacks. And then they also have, if your quarterback, if CJ Stroud comes in and balls out, they have this other thing. If you haven't heard of it, it's called the sophomore slump. That quarterbacks also, one or 2 years in the league. Dak did it his first year, then the second year it kind of digressed, right? Because they studied him, they understood him, they had a full offseason to game plan for him. So, we'll see what happens with Houston, but who do you have at your number 7 spot?
My number 7 is another person we talked about. It is Pat Freiermuth. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I like him. I just think he's a young tight end, and he's getting very good very quickly. So that's kind of like the biggest thing about him. Plus, he's in a great system. I mean, it's hard to get in a better system than a Mike Tomlin coached offense.
Hard to get a better coach in the league.
Yeah, like I think it kind of doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
If you're in that position, especially as a starting tight end. I don't know. I'm a fan of what they do there. I think he's going to be really good.
Absolutely. So my number 6, I'm just going to jump to him because once again we already hit on him a little bit too. But Darren Waller, it's hard when I was making this list. It's really hard to not have Darren Waller in the top 5, just what he's done the past couple of years. But asterisk, like I said, when healthy, right? Like,
absolutely.
And he's also a tier 3 tight end. Yes, Dalton Schultz was also a tier 3 tight end. Dalton Schultz was easily a tier 3 or tier 2. So was Darren Waller was a tier 2 tight end. But Dalton Schultz is going to a brand new offense. We have no idea what's going to happen with that. That's why he went down a tier. And Darren Waller, the health issues, that's why he went down a tier for me too. But just know that one good season with these guys, they're going to jump up to tier 2 next year. But, I mean, yeah, Darren Waller, we've said everything we needed to say about him. We'll see what's going to happen with Daniel Jones and the New York Giants.
Absolutely.
Who do you have at number 6?
My number 6 is, surprise, surprise, it's Dalton Schultz. I mean, the thing about him is why he's so low, if you think he is higher or if you think he is lower. The reason I think he belongs right here is just that, kind of like last year, if you're a Cowboys fan, he just kind of, you saw him disappear a lot when he's supposed to be the number 1 tight end. He's supposed to be top 5 tight end in the league. He's supposed to be this contract year. He's going to get paid a lot, but he just kind of disappeared until maybe the end of the season. He caught 1 or 2 touchdowns in every other game, and it was okay, where has this been? What are you doing? You got to show this consistency if you want the money, which is kind of my biggest thing. You got to go out and perform every game, especially if you're the number 1 tight end for Dak Prescott.
You're on the number 1, most recognizable team in sports, in all of sports, and Dak is your safety blanket for Dak Prescott. Yes. So you got to show up, and there was a lot of points in the season where he had key drops. Exactly. A lot of players on Dallas had key drops. CeeDee Lamb as well. A lot of players had a lot of drop passes. You did see Dak miss a couple times. Obviously, I think everybody on that team had spurts of not the best play, but yeah, I mean Dalton Schultz is just such a big question mark. We have no idea what's going to happen in that Houston team. Jumping to number 5 for me, this is my first tier 2 tight end, Dallas Goedert, the tight end for the Eagles. One up Dak Prescott's safety blanket. You're Dallas Goedert. You're Jalen Hurts' safety blanket.
Yes.
Dallas Goedert was probably going to be a Cowboy. The Eagles jumped 1 spot in a couple drafts ago to take him. Same with the Buffalo tight end this year that was probably going to be a Dallas Cowboy, but Buffalo jumped. It's really hard to have Dallas Goedert in the top 5 just because he's on the Eagles. But at the same time,
he's good.
When I see talent, I know talent, and Dallas Goedert is easily a top 5 tight end in probably every single expert's list when they do come out with these lists, right? The ones, but the reason that is because he can catch the ball, and that's what he's going to do. He's a pass catching tight end first. He is really, really big, very, very lanky, and really tries to go up and get that ball. Mm-hmm. And now Jalen Hurts is developing accuracy, which is very scary.
Very.
Along with his legs that he has, almost like rocket launchers there. And Dallas Goedert is just a walking top 5 tight end in this league because of the play of Jalen Hurts alone, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think among all these tight ends, And I think, except for maybe like Travis Kelsey, I think Dallas Goedert has like the best pure catching ability. I mean, when you see him, he just makes these catches. He makes them look easy. You know, when he gets these balls from Jalen, and usually they're good balls. But like, I can't tell you how many Dallas and Philly games I've watched where Goddard just like grabs the ball out of air with like one hand, and it's just like secures it, and he's down on the ground. And it's like, man, what the like what?
Always on key situations.
You know, he catches it in big moments, and he catches it well, and that's the big thing I think about Dallas Goedert. It's why he's a top 5 tight end, and I will say my top 5 is also Dallas Goedert. I have him at number 5. Just because of that reason and that reason alone. Just because he's not the flashiest player like a lot of the players above him, but he makes the catches when he needs to. It's kind of like when we were talking about Njoku. He makes the catches when he needs to, but it's kind of like to that next echelon.
Exactly. That's
Like-
why he's a tier 2 and Njoku's down probably on tier 3.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like if Njoku had risen up to like the best, I guess, that he could possibly be. That's kind of what Dallas Goedert feels like to me. And yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's going to be a heck of a contract. Get ready, Eagles fans.
I know.
Number 4 for me is the tight end from Minnesota, T.J. Hawkinson. I loved him coming out of college. He played for Detroit for the longest time. They said that he went a little bit early for a lot of folks, but Iowa throws out tight ends and has been. Noah Fant for the Broncos was also an Iowa Hawkeye. You've got other Iowa players who came in this year that are probably going to be starting tight ends for the next couple of years to come. But T.J. Hawkinson literally has got the flow. He's got hella flow.
I love him.
And he's developed to be a very good pass-catching tight end. Really, his game was 50-50 coming in out of college, and now it's more 75-25. But I think the reason it's more 75-25 is because on a team like Minnesota, when you have a Justin Jefferson, you did have a Dalvin Cook. We're going to talk about him in our next segment. But now you are now arguably the number 2,
Easily.
number 3 on that team. I know they got Madison coming in as well. They drafted another player, McBride. But T.J. Hawkinson, you have Justin Jefferson, who's going to get 100+ targets, probably 150 targets a year. That's like a third of that offense. Just give it to Justin Jefferson. Don't even worry about it. That's non-negotiable. I would say T.J. Hawkinson is add probably another third onto that. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the team take everything else. Because if you watch the end of last season, T.J. Hawkinson really started to come on. And if you were playing fantasy at the end of last year, you're going, I have to win because I have to get into playoffs. And I felt like I was always playing T.J. Hawkinson in one league. And I'm like, damn it. I don't want to play T.J. Hawkinson again. But great tight end, great system for Minnesota. They have to double Justin Jefferson, which leaves a linebacker or a safety on T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. My number 4 is also T.J. Hawkinson, so I think our top 5 is probably going to be the same.
Could be.
But absolutely, you said it best. If you haven't looked at his stats when he went over to the Vikings this past year, just go look at them. They're pretty impressive. He absolutely excelled. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw him. I just looked up at the TV and he was just like running down through the end zone. He just got a lot of production out of completely nowhere in that Minnesota squad. So that was really nice to see. And I absolutely top 4 tight ends. Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
Yeah, 100%. Then number 3 for me, tight end, starting our tier 1s. And yes, I have him at number 3, not number 2. This may be unpopular to some folks. Mark Andrews is my number 3 tight end. I don't have him at number 2. I don't have him at number 1. The thing about Mark Andrews is if you look at his numbers, wow. That's why I would say that Mark Andrews is essentially a tier above Dallas Goedert, because he is. Dallas Goedert's a tier 2. Mark Andrews is tier 1. Because he is the main option on that offense. Everybody knows it. He is Lamar's safety blanket, and is going to be because Lamar signed that massive contract. And he's going to be there for a long time and has been there for a long time and is a really, really good number 3 tight end in the league, in my opinion. More touchdown catches than I think any receiver over the however many years that Baltimore's had. Multiple 1,000-yard seasons. Multiple, getting Lamar out of situations, multiple game-winning drives, multiple game-winning touchdowns, but there's one thing he doesn't do, and that's pass block at a high level. And my number 2 tight end does, and everybody knows who the number 1 tight end is. Who do you have at number 3?
This shouldn't come as a surprise, but it is Mark Andrews. And it's kind of interesting because I think I had him for like 2 years in a row in fantasy. And the first year, and this was not this past year, but the one before, he was amazing. He balled out. He played really, really well. And I watched him, and I'm like, okay, awesome. I'm going to get him again. And I got him again. And like the back half of this season, he just kind of disappeared. Granted, a lot of it was because of, the absence from Lamar, but he just didn't get the numbers that he usually got. And I was like, what's going on here? And it got to a point where I was just like, I don't want to start you anymore because you're not putting up any good numbers. And funny enough, you got mad at me because I didn't start Mark Andrews against you in the championship. And I started Dalton Schultz, and I got like 2 touchdowns off of him.
Yeah, that was like the reason I lost. And I won't go into why I actually lost because, that was a very bad situation in Buffalo. Really glad DeMar Hamlin is okay, but that was the game I lost. Mark Andrews, last thing I'll say about Mark Andrews, everybody knows where the ball's going, like I was saying.
Yes.
And there's only 2 other tight ends in this league where you can say that. And that is why he is on tier 1 and is in a league of his own, essentially. Number 2, George Kittle, the tight end for the San Francisco 49ers, also tier 1, also Canadian boy, don't you know? Really good, really good football player. I feel like San Francisco arguably has the number 2 tight end, the number 1 running back, top 5 wide receiver, number 1, number 2 pass rusher, their defensive line.
One of the best defenses.
Arguably the number 1 linebacker with Fred Warner. We're not even going to get into how good their safeties are back there as well, too. But anyway, we're talking about tight ends this episode. George Kittle came into the league, took it by storm. Nobody saw that he was going to be as good as he was going to be. He is a star in this league. He has been a star in this league. He will be a star in this league. This is the only team in the NFC, in my opinion, that holds a candle to the Eagles and the Cowboys, is the 49ers. And I think they're the team to beat in the NFC, in my opinion, aside from the Philadelphia Eagles, because they're in the Super Bowl last year and they took down the 49ers. But the thing with George Kittle is that the end of last season, well, really, the middle of last season and the beginning of last season, he wasn't being utilized as much in the offense, as I'll say. And then toward the end of last year, he literally won me 2 fantasy playoff games because he got over 100 yards, like 2 or 3 touchdowns, multiple weeks in a row, at the hardest time to do it when the playoffs players usually don't go off like that. And then to do what he does at the run game, that's why he's above Mark Andrews to me. It's hard to argue that, Mark Andrews is not a better pass catcher than George Kittle, but at the same time, I don't know if anybody in the league at any position puts their body on the line as much as George Kittle does. George Kittle literally plays like a hockey player. He blocks shots, but instead he blocks. You know what I mean? And he stuffs people and he takes on 2-3 guys. He hits somebody right in the head and he gets up smiling and laughing and tells them good hit. So, one of my favorite players in the league and one of the best players in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's also my number 2. So it's funny. But another part of his game that you don't see people talk about much, because just kind of everyone on his team is better at it than he is, which is amazing, is his run after catch ability.
It's true.
He just gets a lot of his yards from catching it in the open field and kind of just bulldozing through people. And he also has a lot of elusiveness, so he can get around you too. So he's not the biggest tight end you've ever seen, but that's it plays into how good he is at catching the ball and how good he is in open space. And that's why I really like George Kittle. I mean, how can you stand out on an offense that has Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey? How do you stand out in that room? And he manages to do it every week. So, very impressive stuff. Have you seen his mic'd up stuff?
Oh yeah,
that he does.
He takes the mic and holds it close to him. Yes, dude. He's an absolute character. He's my favorite tight end in the league. And then jumping to arguably I don't know if he's more of a character than George Kittle. He could be. Travis Kelce.
No way. Kittle's funny, man.
Kittle's hilarious, but Travis Kelce's
funny too, though.
Kelce's got a lot of Mike moments. That's the number 1 tight end on the list from Kansas City. Thank you, Travis Kelce, for 3 fantasy championships. That hats off to you. Literally had you every year. Nobody's better than Travis Kelce.
No.
I would arguably say too that Travis Kelce, even though there is a tier 1, you could put Travis Kelce a tier above everybody else again. Yeah. You could arguably drop everybody down to tier 2, 3, 4, and then have Travis Kelce being the only tier 1 wide receiver in the NFL. Now, how much of that is Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes, I said Trevor Lawrence could hit a quarter. I think Patrick Mahomes could split a hair like 85 yards down the field from his knees somehow. You know what I mean? Like, Mahomes is going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but Travis Kelce at this point is going to go down as one of the greatest tight ends of all time.
Oh, yeah.
And has Super Bowls to back it up, has numbers to back it up, has, you know what I mean? Like, he has every single thing he needs to back up to arguably be the greatest tight ends of all time, and he's still continuing to perform at a high level. And my favorite thing is that when Tyreek Hill left that offense, everybody went, well, here goes Travis Kelce's numbers go down. No, they went up. And nobody knew that was possible because, yes, you know you're going to throw the ball to Travis Kelce, but now you know that the safety help, instead of covering Tyreek Hill, is going to go shadow Travis Kelce. Doesn't matter. He'll take 2. He'll take 3. Him and George Kittle, I think, are the only guys in the league that can do that.
Yeah.
Take double coverages or triple coverages and still get open and still get the ball. But like I said, Travis Kelce, league of his own, and nobody's on the same level as him.
Absolutely. I mean, he's number 1 on my list too. Like, it's just, he's number 1 in the league at like everything. You know what I mean? Like, if you just look at like his connection with Mahomes, and it's just amazing. Like, they'll have like plays where Mahomes is like scrambling and doing whatever, and this dude is just improvising, going up and back and out and in, and he's just trying to get open for Mahomes, and he's trying to create space and do all these things, and it doesn't matter what down it is. He's always looking for the ball. He's always like, it's like him and Mahomes, they just have a connection. Mm-hmm. Like, Mahomes says go left in his mind, and Kelsey's like, got it. He just cuts left. He catches the ball. He's down the field.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, what do you want him to do? You know, what do you want a defense to do? Because they're just so in sync with each other, and they get all these numbers, and they get all these crazy cool plays. It's hard to put anyone else above him, especially since, like you said, he's like the only one on that offense that's really, I mean, not really doing anything, but a lot of other players are just kind of like, you know, plug and play players. You know, he's the only one that's kind of like a cemented number 1 on that offense anymore.
Yeah, I mean, other than Tyreek Hill, you know, when Tyreek Hill left, that was obviously the number 1. It was him and Kelsey's offense, and then they had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back out of LSU, that was really solid there for a couple years. But now you have Pacheco.
Exactly.
I think it's Pacheco. I think it's Kelce, and then everybody else is kind of a toss-up. But at the same time, Patrick Mahomes is like Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
You're going to see Aaron Rodgers go to the Jets, and you're going to see Garrett Wilson go to the next level. Mm-hmm. You're going to see him go to a next level. And that's what Mahomes does to literally every single player. Is Kadarius Toney as good as he is? I don't know. On the Giants, he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But on the Chiefs, he balls. You know what I mean? I loved Kadarius Toney coming out of college. Did a little bit off the Giants. He had a couple good games, but and then he goes to the Chiefs and was like a arguable Super Bowl. I think he got a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he got a touchdown.
Yeah, pretty sure he got a touchdown in the Super Bowl. One of the iciest grills I've ever seen in my life. Now that is all the tight end rankings for this episode. We're gonna jump to some key NFL free agents. We got about 6 of them on the list. Nothing crazy. We just wanted them to throw them out there because honestly, I didn't realize these guys were still out there, and they are. So, first one we're going to start with an offensive guard. You know, if your team needs offensive guard help, Dalton Risner, he played for the Broncos. I think he's 28 or 29 years old, so he's under 30. You know, I would sign him to a 2-3 year deal if you need a guard. I know guards are needed in the NFL, and since he hasn't been signed, that means his contract's not going to be too big. So, you know, he's really the only guard left, in my opinion, that's like still could be a starter. Like, I think you could go sign this guy today, and he could start for you tomorrow.
Absolutely. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Like, if you're a team that needs guard help, regardless, if you have a really good guard or if you have 2 really good guards, like, it doesn't matter. You can still use an offensive depth, especially if you need like a swing guard or anything like that too. Like, it's, you know, someone will sign him. 100%.
Exactly. And then jumping still, we're going to stay on the offensive side of the ball first, then we're going to jump to the defensive side of the ball. We got 3 offensive players and 3 defensive players. The next player, really glad we waited till today to do this episode because Mr. Dalvin Cook is an NFL free agent.
Actually not a Viking.
Wow. Did not see that one coming. That was like Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas getting just released from the Seahawks. Same with Richard Sherman. You know, wow, it's an end of an era in Minnesota.
What happened?
I don't know. You know, it has to be the injuries. It also has to be that Alexander Madison, whenever he needed to step up. It also had to be the fact that they drafted McBride out of UAB, who is easily a number 2 running back in this league. So I understand why they let him go, but at the same time,
There goes your home run hitter on the running
Yeah,
back side.
he didn't even have a bad season. I mean,
He
like,
had a great season.
what else do you want him to do? It's just hard to me. There had to be something else that they were considering too, along with it.
I think that Minnesota is starting to go through maybe not rebuild mode because they have their team's too good to go through rebuild mode at this point in time. But if you see a key running back go, the next position I see go is the quarterback.
Kirk, yeah.
And I don't know how much longer Kirk has on his contract left, but you really hope that Madison can come in there and step in and do what Dalvin Cook could do because it's the argument with Tony Pollard and Zeke. Mm-hmm. It's the same argument, right? You started to see Madison play a little bit better at times than Dalvin Cook last season. You saw it.
Yeah,
you saw it. So the Vikings are literally betting on that. Now, I think Dalvin Cook has at least 1 to 2 more years at the high level that he has.
At least, yeah.
At least, like I was saying, at least 1 to 2 more years. So I think this was a bit of a premature, letting him go, releasing him to free agency. But he hasn't been picked up yet. It's only been a day. You know what I mean? But I've started to see rumors going to Miami. And if he goes to Miami,
no way, I would cry.
there goes your really fun running back that you like. I think Mostert, right?
I love Raheem Mostert, man.
Mostert instantly goes down to number 2. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. It was just an article I read on Bleacher Report. But Dalvin Cook is out there, folks, and that's crazy. Now jumping to the last offensive key player that we got left in free agency is DeAndre Hopkins.
You know who he is.
He's 31. Still got a lot left in the tank. I think the reason that he's a free agent still is because he probably wants a bigger contract. Mm-hmm. I think that he's not taking the veteran minimum, and I think that's why he's still out there. That's the only reason why he's still out there, because he leads the league in virtually every single category since he's come into it. In Houston, he was the offense there. I would compare him to like Andre Johnson. They just threw the ball up to Hop every single time. You knew exactly what was happening, and Hop literally dominated. Not to mention how great he is off the field. You bring in a guy, to your city alone, he's going to transform the city, not only the team within the city. So Hopkins, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens wherever he lands, but he's another guy that absolutely will get picked up before this thing is all said and done.
He's kind of like the KD of the NFL. He just
That's a good comparison.
He wants to go and win with a Super Bowl contender. That's where he wants. He doesn't want any less. And I like it. I think he's a really good receiver still. I think a lot of people are kind of counting him off because he's old. But I don't know. He's not that old, guys. Like, he was still making highlight plays in Arizona with Kyler Murray when he was playing. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's still a ton of upside to him. And whoever gets him is going to get a still really good receiver.
Exactly. And you really need to put him into a number 2 spot, right? Like,
I don't know, though. I don't know.
Well, the thing with me is if he wants to go to a team that is one player away, that's kind of what I'm saying. Yes, that could be a wide receiver number 1, but the thing with Hop is wide receiver number 1, you got a 17-game season, then you got at least 4 playoff games.
Yeah.
If you're not the number 1 seed, that's a lot of football for somebody that's in the 31. But still, the thing with Hopkins is that you saw it last year that he did disappear during games, but also Arizona was like a dumpster fire last year.
Arizona was bad.
That offense toward the end of the season last year was horrendous. DeAndre Hopkins and James Conner were like the only good players on that entire team. Ertz didn't even look that great at times.
They didn't even look like a football team.
No, at times they really didn't. But hey, that's why he's arguably the best offensive player still there, aside from Dalvin Cook. I think we'll see who picks him up. But if you need a number 1 wide receiver and a number 2 wide receiver on probably any team in the NFL, go out and get your boy DeAndre Hopkins. Now jumping to the defensive side of the ball, we got Marcus Peters. He's still out there.
Really?
Yeah, Marcus Peters. He's 30. Ravens have not re-signed him back yet. He's played for the Rams. He's played for pretty much moved around a lot in the NFL. But that's a great number 3 depth corner that is still available. That's going to take a low contract.
Yes.
That is a player that you absolutely need to get.
He's great. I mean, he was a staple in that Baltimore defense for years.
And he's a physical corner. If your team needs a guy to go up and kind of thump some heads, that's a guy that you want to get.
Absolutely.
Now, two defensive ends that are available. I couldn't believe this first one was available. Unique Ngakoue. He played for Jacksonville for a long time. Got a lot of sacks in Jacksonville. They let him go to a big contract. I want to say the Colts, and now the Colts are letting him go.
Yeah.
Let him go, and he's still out there. I think he wants a bigger contract. I think he's in his late 20s. So he's really looking to sign that contract. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. But if you could somehow get him in for cheap or a couple-year deal, incentive base it, then that's a really good player and easily a number 2 defensive end and could develop into a number 1 defensive end before the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's that kind of guy that you bring in, like Dallas does it all the time. They bring him in on 1-2 year deals just to kind of bolster that depth and get a lot of veteran help in the defensive end room. Like they did it. What is his name?
Robert Quinn.
Robert Quinn, great example. Yeah. So it's just, that's what you want to do with him. And hopefully if he turns into something better, he's going to get a better contract. But he's not putting up the numbers that he used to in Ngakoue. Yeah. So that's kind of where he is at in his career. And I would love him if he's in Dallas, but I don't think they're going to get him.
No. His price tag's probably a little bit too high, even though we will hit on what we think Dallas is going to do in this next segment. But last defensive end that is available, I couldn't believe that this guy was still not signed. Jadeveon Clowney. The defensive end for the Cleveland Browns on the other side of Myles Garrett. I don't think he was in training camp, if I'm not mistaken, because he's not signed. But the thing is with Clowney, man, is he did not live up to the hype. He absolutely did not live up to the hype. He was pretty sure a number 1 former pick. The athleticism alone, you can't not take him number 1. But at the same time, he has developed into a very nice run-blocking defensive end. And you can arguably put him in the defensive tackle position, which is what I've seen Cleveland do a couple times on some goal line situations. So he has depth versatility there. He's clearly not looking for a big contract. If he is, he's going to stay a free agent.
Yeah.
But if he's looking for a small contract, kind of prove-it deal, another incentive contract, I think you could sign him, and he'd be really, really good on obvious third and run situations, obvious first down running situations. Bring him in on blitzes. Bring him in, when you have more an athletic defensive tackle to where you need kind of, that rush blocker in the back. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I think about Jadeveon Clowney. We'll see if he gets signed. I'm not sure out of everybody on this list, Jadeveon Clowney and Marcus Peters are 2 guys that I don't know if they'll be signed, just because they are both. I think Jadeveon's 30. I think Marcus Peters is in 31, 32. But they've been out there for so long and they're veterans, so it's weird to me that they haven't been picked up yet.
It is strange, especially with the Clowney thing, because Clowney is just like, when he's on the field, he makes an impact. Don't get me wrong, like he does have an impact on the field, although it might not be huge. He does like garner some attention from an offense, especially you saw that in Cleveland, and he's an excellent choice if you want to stick him at that number 2 defensive end spot, like to stick behind a star like Myles Garrett. And that's
exactly.
When I saw them do it in Cleveland, I was like, this is a really good move. But the thing about it was he wasn't healthy a lot and he wasn't on the field a lot, so it kind of didn't really work. When both of them were on the field, I was very excited because okay, this is good, they're going to do something, but it didn't happen all that often. So be aware if you do get him as on your team, he might not be there for game day.
And maybe that's why he's one of the reasons he's still a free agent right now, right? That's the main reason is he's not on the field as much as he should be.
But I mean, he's still a good player, and he still should get signed along with Marcus Peters.
Absolutely, completely agree. Jumping to the last segment of the show, we are talking about Dallas Cowboys offseason moves here. Guess what? Dallas is signing none of these guys. Literally not a single guy. Hopkins is going to be too much money. I think Cook is going to be too much money. Unique Ngakoue, I think, is going to be too much money. Jadeveon Clowney, I just don't think that Dallas is going to bring him in as a depth guy. I just don't really see that kind of being a Dan Quinn type of player, even though the position versatility is very Dan Quinn-like. But the athleticism, he's a little bit more athletic than a lot of the guys we have on the team. So I'm not too sure if he's really even a fit for Dallas. And then Dalton Risner, the offensive guard, I think the reason he's out there is, like I said, because he's 28 and he wants that big contract. So we do need guard help. Dallas does need guard help, but I don't. That I think is a little bit too rich. And then cornerback Marcus Peters, hey, I'm hitting the bell. We need to go get him. We have Stephon Gilmore that we brought in. Bring in Marcus Peters as your number 4.
I mean, it'd be cool. Don't get me wrong.
Or your 5.
But I don't know. I don't get me wrong. I love Marcus Peters. I don't think Dallas will do that though.
No.
That would be cool if they had 3 number 1 starting caliber cornerbacks on their defense. That would be nice. But they're not going to spend that kind of money.
No, and that's the reason that they're probably still available, right? But
yeah,
the thing is it came out recently. The NFL, I don't remember the author's name. It was talking about the top NFL teams salary cap wise left after the draft, after free agency, and everything going on. And Dallas was actually number 2 with $10 million left. And you've heard it here first. It's gonna be a quick segment, but the reason that Dallas has that $10 million and what they're gonna do with it, there's about 3 players that Dallas needs to sign. Trayvon Diggs, who is up after the end of this year, who's the cornerback for Dallas, who is arguably in the market of $20 to $25 million a year. You have CeeDee Lamb, who Dallas is going to pick up the 5th-year option on, but you still have to sign him because that player is most likely not a 5th-year option type of player.
He's gonna get paid.
He's going to get paid big time. He already knows it. Dallas gave him the number 88. They already let all their cards on the table when they gave them that number, because you're not just going to let a number 88 walk. That's Drew Pearson. That's Michael Irvin. That's Des Bryant. You didn't let Des Bryant walk until like 9 or 10 years later.
Yeah.
There's no way you're letting CeeDee Lamb walk. So you've got to sign Trayvon Diggs with this $10 million. You have to somehow figure out a way to sign Trayvon Diggs and use this as a portion of that guaranteed money. Or use this as a portion of the money each year is what I meant to say, and then bring in that guaranteed money, make it heavy up front like Dallas usually does, make it to where you can get out of the contract in the later half of it, just in case something goes awry. But you have Trayvon Diggs there, then you have CeeDee Lamb, to which they're going to pay, and then the third one, Tanner, why don't you touch on the third one that is probably going to be the biggest contract in NFL history?
The best defensive player in the NFL, Micah Parsons, will be up for contract soon, people.
Micah has a couple more years because guess what, folks? Micah is also not a 5-year player. Micah was taken in the first round, yes, but that 5th-year option is not going to be picked up on Micah, is not going to be picked up on CD, and those are the 2 that are going to absolutely break the bank.
He's going to break the bank hard. Like he's going to be the number 1 defensive player, like in terms of salary.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's
for sure.
It has to.
Dallas set a record with Dak Prescott when they signed him quarterback. They're gonna set a record for a defensive player.
Bro, it doesn't even matter. Like people are setting records like left and right, and nowadays, like they just don't care. So.
Yeah, they're gonna sign him to a heck of a contract. But out of those 3, who do you let walk if you can't sign one of them? Trayvon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, or Micah Parsons?
It has to be Diggs.
It has to be Diggs. And there goes your number 1 corner who had 13 interceptions in one season.
I mean, yeah, but like he's like the most inconsistent out of all 3 of them.
I think he was like in the top 5 of like most passing yards against him.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Everyone knows. Everyone makes fun of him, like.
But at the same time, I don't want him to go anywhere. We cannot let Trayvon go anywhere. And then last player that we wanted to talk about real quickly, that's not getting a lot of traction right now. I think at the end of this season we'll start to get a little bit more traction. Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott only has 2 years left on his contract, including this year. Including this year coming up. So, that leads into another big question. Those are 4 contracts that are going to essentially break the bank. Those are going to every one of those contracts, no matter how the way you look at it, is going to break the bank. The lowest you're looking at is Trayvon at like $20 to $25 million a year. So, we'll see if Dallas can sign all of them, but I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, they're going to have to let some people go.
A lot of people go.
You might have to say goodbye to your DeMarcus Lawrence for the rest of Cowboy history,
Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard's on a 1-year deal. That's another one we forgot. You have to sign Tony Pollard. Dallas has a lot. Running back. Dallas has a lot, and yes, that's exactly what Dallas is going to do probably next year in the first couple rounds is draft the top running back. But yeah, Dallas has got $10 million plus in free agent or in remaining salary cap, and they've got 4 to 5 players that they need to sign. 2 of them are this year. 2 of them are next year, and you could potentially push off Micah 1 more following year after that, but I really don't think that's going to happen.
But I mean, that's just where you're going to put your money then at that point. Because, I mean, it used to be in, like our D Wares and our D Laws of the world, and that's where the money went, right? Obviously now it's going to be, Zeke's money is probably going to be going towards Tony Pollard now, and then, Dak's money is going to stay the same, and Amari's money when he was here is probably going to go towards CD. Exactly. I know they're going to budget it well, and they're going to try and keep every single player. And if those are the only players that we have, I'm kind of okay with that,
That's a hell of a team to build around.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have key pieces on the offense and the defense, and they're both pretty freaking good.
Yeah, and you just keep drafting like you have been over the past couple years, right? And
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
keep putting in draft picks, and that's how Seattle won themselves the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Right? They
Yes.
had the Legion of Boom and their key players on offense. But that wraps it up for another episode of RDH Sports. Thanks everyone for the listen, and catch you all next week for more sports talk.
Later.